When I was young and growing up, I remember my mum telling me about Enoch Powell and talking to me about the Rivers of Blood speech. And it was something that I kind of was aware of from a very early age. I think when you grow up as visibly non-white in this country, there are things that you will encounter outside of your house that your parents need to prepare you for. And the way that racism had been showing up and shows up in UK society was one of the ways that my mum, was very keen to prepare us for. And so I was very aware of this Enoch Powell speech, even though it preceded me, and I wasn't around when he made his speech. And so every time I would hear like a politician or somebody make reference to Enoch Powell, and in particular the speech, it would make my ears prick up as well, like either just in everyday life, like if I was at work or something and someone had mentioned it, or if I were watching the news and an MP references him, I'm like, and I'm looking at you sideways. So that was kind of the context under which I came to understand some of the dynamics when it came to immigration. And also I am the granddaughter of someone that came over as part of the Windrush generation. So there was also, I had that as a backdrop for which you can be called subjects of an empire. You can travel on a British passport as a British subject to a country who asks you to come to that country to help them rebuild, and still be mistreated and still be looked down upon and still be victimized and discriminated against within that society. And then also just be told to go, when they've decided they've had enough of you. But I'll digress. This is something that is very much present in my life in terms of how I contextualize and look at the tapestry of where I am now and the things that had to come together to make me be here, if that makes any sense. When I think about who I am and how I show up in society now, it's a kind of mosaic of all of these things that came before me to put me in this position. And so I tend to also try to not necessarily carry those things with me, but maintain an awareness of them when I'm consuming everyday things that happen now. And I feel like I'm speaking in riddles, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to spend this episode speaking about immigration in the UK, and specifically in light of the comments made by Keir Starmer, who described the UK as being in danger of becoming an island of strangers. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Misinformation Podcast. My name is Z. I'm also known as the Reluctant Accountant, and today's episode is talking about the price of UK immigration, but perhaps also the cost of it. So when I was starting this and I was doing some research, a lot of the things that came up when looking about UK immigration, and it's a big topic, right? At the moment, there's a kind of general rise in populism across the globe. And one of those things it tends to bring with it is this kind of nationalistic views that are kind of heralded and this innate xenophobia. So obviously that can be, very much racialized, but there can also just be xenophobia, like just fear of anyone from any other country. And it's also fascinating, just as a sidebar, to see when that fear it crystallizes in the non-white population as well, and how they can actually be swept in to parroting that rhetoric that is so harmful even for them, but also was harmful for their parents or grandparents. But I'm going to digress when I say that. I'm going to try and stick to a kind of a good format and run through this with you. But I feel like I just woke up today and I was like, I got something to get off my chest. So if this feels a little bit rambly, I want to apologize in advance. But you're here now. You might as well just stick it out and see where we go. It's going to be a journey for us together. So let's take it. So when I was looking at things, I'd kind of think about the trajectory that I've seen specifically since the Brexit vote. So we had the Vex. We made everyone vex, most people. We had the Brexit vote in 2016, and a lot of the noise around that was predicated on this kind of fear of immigrants. I do believe, there were other legitimate reasons that people felt they were voting for it. Like, I'm not in that camp where I just feel like everyone voted because they're like racist. I don't believe that. But I do feel the biggest thing was the promotion of xenophobia, whether that be through we want to cut down on immigration, or whether it's like, these foreign people are meddling in our UK affairs, we need to get rid of them. However they dressed it up, it came down to the same thing where there was this fear of other. And so we had Brexit, the referendum. Subsequent to that, we had this kind of Shakespearean tragedy of multiple different Tory leaders coming in, trying to cling on to power, stab everyone in the back, not really addressing the needs of the country, because that's obviously going to be second to them retaining power, and being able to be in a position to mess up things in a country. So that kind of took a second seat as things slowly unraveled. And I do believe that whilst that was all happening, the EU were getting their ducks in order. They knew what they wanted to accept and what they didn't want to accept. And the UK were still fighting about, whether we should or shouldn't believe that we're going to get 350 million or whatever it is every week for the NHS. We didn't. Spoiler alert. So we had that situation. We had the Brexit vote. We had the kind of Tory Greek tragedy or whatever it was. And then we settled. Who did we have last? I don't even remember. I think Rishi Sunak was the last prime minister that came. I think he was just like whatever was left. They looked in the tin and they were like, there's like a broken custard cream at the bottom, we're going to have to do with that. So they have Rishi Sunak in and Brexit gets done. But it doesn't get done because the people that are the main champions of Brexit, such as Nigel Farage, are not happy with it. And he's not happy because he's never going to be happy. It's never going to be enough for him. This is a man that voted for Brexit in the knowledge and complained about, for example, hearing foreign languages being spoken in public in the UK, but then had married at the time a German lady, and so supposedly his children would have been speaking German. So like, this guy is just the biggest snake oil salesman ever, and he has been given so much airtime and being platformed all over the place as though he has something of real genuine value to add to the British public. And I know there will be people that think, he's such a great bloke. Why is he great? What has he done that's great? Demonstrably. Like, what has he done that's great? And also, what are these huge values almost a decade after the referendum that we are seeing or appreciating or valuing that we didn't have when we were in the EU? What is it that we are now benefiting from? So anyway, so I'll leave that there. So one of the things in his current incarnation as a leader of reform or whatever that Farage is pioneering or pushing rather is this whole immigration thing. It's always about immigration, right? And I guess if you bang on about something and just continuously talk about something as though it's an issue, I guess people either tune out or they start to believe it. And if you say it in simple enough terms, then yeah, that's the issue. The reason you don't have a job is because of immigration. You don't have a house because of immigration. Oh my God, you can't do this. It's because of immigration. It's because of immigration. Like all of these things, right? And so we've seen with this rise of populism, those people who previously, I think in the last election, in my opinion, what we saw was there wasn't a real challenge from any of the real contender parties of reform because they wanted reform to split the Tory vote. So it kind of felt like, looking at the stats, and I'm sure if I'm incorrect, someone will point it out in the comments, but looking at the stats, it kind of felt like the Tories may still have won the last election, beggars belief, if it wasn't for reform splitting the vote. And so Labour kept stum about Nigel Farage, so they didn't want Tories to win, so they needed him to split the Tory vote. So election goes by, Labour win, Tories are out. They look around again for another leader. They're like, this girl will do. So they put Badenoch there, who will never be prime minister. I just want you to know, if you think that's going to happen, then I've got a bridge to sell you, a garden bridge. So we're in this situation now where Farage is still given airtime. He's still I don't know how many MPs for reform have. It's like 4 or something, maybe 6. Why is he given so much time to platform his ideas? So for me, that means the media is complicit in all of those extreme views that he is spouting. They are complicit in the dissemination of that information, and also when it's false, because he doesn't really get checked. He doesn't really get challenged in the way that he should be. So We're at a situation now where previous government, the Tories, put in place this kind of Rwanda plan. And the money spent on that, I think, was like 700 million. And in the end, we had like 4 people that actually went to Rwanda. They passed a law because Rwanda wasn't deemed a safe country. And so to get around that, they were like, you know what, we've got Brexit, we can pass our own laws now. And they were like, we're going to pass a law to make Rwanda a safe country, which makes no sense, but that's what they did. And then Labour came in after we've wasted all this money on this Rwanda plan. By the way, if you weren't aware, under the Rwanda scheme, if you came into this country by what was deemed a legal means, so like on a lorry, on a boat, or some other kind of non-standard means, you would be then forcibly removed to Rwanda, from which your asylum claim would be processed. And if you succeeded, you would just stay there. Not you would be brought back to you'd stay in Rwanda. Okay. So anyway, we had this Rwanda plan, and then Labour get into power and they scrap the plan. So it kind of felt like, despite everything, maybe this guy wasn't as diabolical as we thought he would be. So they scrap the plan, and then he comes out with his new immigration plan, his plan for immigration, Starmer does. And what I find really interesting about that is that focus there is, for me, why are you trying to appeal to voters that were not going to vote for you anyway? Like, they weren't going to vote for you. So why are you, like, it's giving real big pick-me energy, and it's so distasteful to see. So he's doing all of these things, and he's trying to appeal to these people. Like, we're so tough on immigration. We're so tough on it. We're tough. And he reveals these new plans that he has. And when he's doing this revelation, he's like, I'm gonna channel my inner Enoch. And so he was like, well, he had rivers of blood speech, so I'm gonna make my speech talking about we're in danger of becoming an island of strangers. And as somebody that has worked in the legal profession, him, not me, as a former QC, I believe, I definitely will never believe that man doesn't know the power of words. He doesn't know the power of what he is saying and the dog whistles that he is making. And so he stands up there and he talks about this kind of island of strangers. And then you have his kind of Labour MPs trying to spin it as though we haven't just heard what we've heard, and he hasn't been behaving in the way that he's been behaving. So he rolls out these plans for stricter immigration. And when I mention the price and the cost of things, because we have this, you know, there is a real cost for not managing immigration correctly. And there are routes and there are industries that we really need immigrants in. We need immigrants. I remember having a conversation years ago with a colleague who ran like the South Africa branch of the company that I was working for. And he was like, I think he'd been an economist, or like he trained in that. And he had said, you know, South Africa, you know, they had their own problem with xenophobia as well at the time. And he was like, you know, to be truly independent, you need to have like 160 million. I think it was between 140 or 160 million people in a country to be self-sufficient and autonomous. And so he said, we don't have that much. So obviously Nigeria are in a position that they can kind of take over like and do what they need to do. And he said, so we keep saying like we don't want people, but we should be welcoming people. And we in the UK, in case you're not aware, are not even close. We are not even close to having 160 million. And so for us to operate at the levels that we want to produce the things and increase our GDP in the ways that we want to, and service industries that need servicing, we're going to need people to do it. And we don't necessarily have enough people. And we don't also live at the moment in a society where we force people to do specific jobs. And the reason I say that is because one of the areas in which Starmer has chosen a hill to die on is care visas. And so when I say care visas, in case you don't know, I'm talking about dedicated social care workers getting a visa. So that previously, during COVID, this was introduced. Social care workers would get this visa, and this is going to be scrapped next month. And so the reason that I say this is because it's interesting. I've had like very random things that I've done in my life. And I once held a PCO license. Shout outs to me. I could have been a black cab driver. I couldn't. I didn't do the knowledge, but I did have a PCO license. And if you don't know what that stands for, look it up. No, I'm joking. It's Public Carriage Office. And so I used to work with a friend of mine, driving people around. And one of the people that we used to drive around were care workers. And I think that I'm not wrong in saying this was around the Christmas period. I remember I was picking up work. This was in 2009. No, 2007. It was 2007. This happened around the Christmas period. And we were driving all up and down, taking them to like different people's houses and whatever. And I say this because I remember not once in all of the journeys did any of those care workers, were any of them white English born people? There were none. There were not even any like just British born people, native British born people. There were some people that came over when they were kids, from the Caribbean, and there were some West Africans and there were Eastern Europeans, but none of them were native, what people would describe as native English people. Some people would describe. And so this idea that our care system, in the dire straits that it is, can survive without having immigration is something that I would like to see. Because again, fine, you could be like, well, we need to give those jobs to the UK people. Are they applying for those jobs? Do we have the desire within our population to fill those positions? I don't know, but it's a very interesting sector. And it's a sector that they've blamed for the increase in immigration. They're like, well, these visas are the problem. So I find that really interesting. Then they've got this other one where it's like stricter student rules. So at the moment, after student visa expires, students are only able to stay for like 2 years, and they're going to bring that to 18 months. Why I find that really interesting as well is because, again, we often, when people are trying to deny that their position on immigration is fueled by racism or is anything to do with racism, they say, no, it's fine. We just want skilled workers. We also tend to hold our educational institutions in quite high esteem. So if somebody has come to the country, spent a lot of money, because trust me, international fees are way more than home student fees, on the education in this country, and then says, actually, I'd really like to work here for a while, for like 5 years, or maybe even reside here. I'll be paying taxes, doing all of that. I don't see is that not the immigrant that you want? That you've said that, yeah, no, we do want highly skilled. So is it just that you just don't want anybody? Like, I feel like we need to set that out, because the economy does benefit from skilled and actually non-skilled labor, to be honest. And it does benefit from having a highly educated population that, in theory, should be getting jobs where they would pay more in income tax, and so that's more revenue for the government. So again, when I'm speaking about like the price versus the cost, like, is that a cost to the economy that we're willing to endure simply because we've decided that we want everybody to be English? Like, how long do we go cutting off our noses to spite our faces before we're like, actually, I'd like to breathe through both nostrils? That would be quite sublime. And the final one that I always find interesting is when they talk about dependents, whether dependents are allowed to come to the UK with whoever's got the visa. So whether that's like a student visa, and whether they're allowing dependents, or whatever the visa is, the role of dependents. And I know that the government is saying that they're going to table legislation at the time of recording this to clarify how the right to family life in European human rights law should apply to immigration cases. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, Keir Starmer was a human rights lawyer who apparently doesn't really believe that much in human rights, or maybe only specific type of humans. Because for me, it's so interesting to see somebody that absolutely seems to completely disregard the humanity of others in this effort to appease a fraction of society that are hell-bent on making immigration and some sort of like weird nationalism the forefront and priority in their lives. And that's not to say, look, people can believe whatever they want to. And certainly politicians with their political rhetoric, and the media class with their headlines, with platforming specific individuals, they are doing a really good job of furthering that as the kind of prevailing sentiment within the country. However, if we look, and I think I looked at statistics which said that currently like 1 in 5 people think that immigration is a problem. And if you dig deeper, I think I looked into, I think it's called the Migration Observatory or something like that. I'll clarify the name. And they were saying, I looked at the stats and it said that actually the majority of people in this country, or the majority of people, according to their surveys, are even neutral about immigration or think it's a positive thing. The majority of people. So they had like, I think it was around 30 to 37%, 38% were saying that immigration is a bad thing and they wanted all immigration stopped. Like either one of those things. Or they wanted some immigration stopped or it needs to be reduced. Whatever. They felt negatively was their overriding value. But the fact is the majority of people don't feel negatively. And why I find that interesting is because why are we constantly spending time and money and effort in focusing on the views of what essentially seems to be the minority? Certainly that's what these statistics would tell us, when actually we could actually just start fixing real problems in the country. Because just like when we voted Brexit, which a lot of people didn't know what they were voting for apparently, when they voted for Brexit, which divorced us from the European Union. And that was supposed to be the thing that solved immigration and all of our problems. And then, surprise, it didn't. It feels like there will always be another thing. And so we voted Brexit and then, okay, we voted it, now we need to get it done. And then all these deals came on the table and were poo-pooed. And then we didn't get it done. Or then we did get Brexit done. And now there's still another problem. There's always going to be one more thing. It's never going to be enough. And so when we put all these policies in place and we put everything in force and we get these really, really the strictest ever immigration that we can ever have, what you'll see is the people with money, real money, will find ways to circumnavigate that. You'll see that actually there's likely to be reciprocal things happen. So if you restrict the movement of people to this country, the countries may start to do the same. And also you'll find that there will be industries that definitely will just suffer. And so the services that you take for granted, the services that you feel entitled to, for whatever reason, maybe because you're a citizen, maybe because you've paid in income tax your whole life, all of these services that you feel should be running smoothly and efficiently because we literally don't have the resource and the power, the labor force to be able to provide those in a way that is affordable to you. Who will be the next problem? Because once we've got rid of all of the immigrants that we don't want, who's the next? Is it the immigrants that we did want? Is it the people that don't look like you? And so all of this to say this, I haven't really dealt specifically in a lot of figures because I feel like just the Rwanda plan on its own, this waste of £700 million was a huge demonstration on how easily we can essentially piss in the wind in this country just to appease a fraction of society who, yes, have made that a big issue. But to be honest with you, they probably have a lot more issues that you could be addressing, that if you alleviated the strains that they feel from those things, they would calm down a little bit about they haven't got their country back. They might do. I'm not sure. I don't have friends like that, but I'm assuming that they also have other pain points within their life that could be addressed. But you've decided the easiest one to focus on would be this one that hurts other people. Well done. So I want us to think about when we hear numbers like 700 million, yes, that is a huge price. It's a cost to the economy. But what also is the cost of us not doing certain things? Because actually, as much as we feel like we're this great British empire, we're not. But as much as some people may feel that we hold some sort of untouchable place on the world stage, we don't. And the truth is, we actually can't do it alone. Well, that is all I've got time for today. Thank you once again for joining me. I will be back next week with another episode. Maybe, I don't know, if you felt this one was a little bit rambly, just deal with it. Like, sometimes it bees like that. We just need to ride that wave. Thank you for joining me. If you would like to connect with me in between the episodes, if you're like, oh, Z, how am I going to do without you for a week? You'll be fine. However, I am on TikTok and I'm on Instagram, so you can catch me there at The Reluctant Accountant. But in the meantime, I will see you in the zeitgeist. Stay safe.